Are there any accidents in God? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Channel Summary of the Summa Theologica. Today we're in Part 1, Question 3, God's Simplicity, Article 6, whether there are any accidents in God. And I should say right off the bat, by accidents, we don't mean, oops, I had an accident. We're talking about accidents in contradistinction to substance. So this is Aristotelian philosophy. Substance is a natural kind of thing and something that can exist on its own, doesn't exist in something else. So this would be something like dog, tree, magnesium, something like that. Whereas accidents exist in other things. So they exist in substances. So these are things like modifications or features of substances or traits of substances, something like that. Aristotle famously enumerated 9 different accidents, and there have been changes to the list, but we have quantity, so something like 210 pounds. Quality, so something like red. Relation, something like to the left of. Action, something like runs. Passion, something like gets hit. Time, place, position, habit. These are all accidents. These are modifications of a substance. These are things, they are not substances in and of themselves, right? Red does not walk down the street. Red does not exist in and of itself, but red exists in a substance. It would, like if you had Clifford the red dog, red exists in the substance of dog that is Clifford. So now remember, for Aquinas, God is radically simple. The question is he so radically simple that he doesn't even have accidents like that? Like he doesn't have things like quantity, quality, and those kinds of things. And Aquinas is going to say, yes, he is that radically simple that he does not have accidents. And here he is laying out his position. He says, 1, every accident is in a subject. So, for example, you wouldn't see like 210 pounds walking down the street, like we said before. It's not like red just stops and says hi. Those are things that are in subjects. 2, no simple form can be a subject, and he gets this from Boethius on the Trinity. Now, in that work, Boethius talks about a subject. What he really means is just something that something else can be in. And when he says a simple form, we've already sort of talked about simple form. These are something without parts, right? It's purely a form. It doesn't have any parts to it. And if it's going to be a simple form like that with something without parts, then it can't be something that other things can be in, right? Because it doesn't have any parts. So it can't be a subject. So that's Boethius's point. 3, so God cannot be a subject, because remember, God is a simple form. 4, so in God there cannot be any accident. And that's Aquinas' point. So let's look at his arguments. Argument 1, a subject is in some sense made actual by its accidents. And what do we mean by this? So a dog is not an actual dog unless it is a brown dog or a golden dog or something like that, right? It has to be a particular color in order for it to be an actual dog. So and the color is one of its accidents. So in a way, the accident actualizes the potential dog that we have there. So in that sense, the accident makes it actual. 2, so a subject is compared to its accidents as potentiality to actuality. 3, there is no potentiality in God, and we get this from Part 1, Question 2, Article 3. 4, so God is not a subject made actual by accidents. Argument 2, most essences may have something superadded to it, and he gives the example of a heated substance that can have something extraneous to heat added to it, such as whiteness, right? Like if you have something that is like a heated up surfboard, and you can throw white on top of the heated up surfboard. 2, But absolute being cannot have something super added to it, as Boethius says in De Habdomadibus. His example here is that absolute heat, just pure heat, can have nothing else rather than heat added to it. 3, God is his own existence. And remember, what he means by this is that God's essence is existence. He is pure being. He is existence itself. 4, so God is absolute being. But if God is absolute being and you can't add anything, you can't super add anything to absolute being, then 5, nothing can be super added to God's essence. Argument 3. What is essential is prior to what is accidental, right? And this is ontologically speaking, so not chronologically speaking, meaning like in the order of dependence of being, right? The things that are essential to you are prior to the things that are just accidental. So like my humanity is prior to my 6'2"-ness. 2, God is absolute primal being, right? He is just first being. 3, so there can be in him nothing accidental, right? If he is first being, there's no such thing as there's also this other thing in here that's secondary, right? He's just pure first being. 4, now you may see that and think, but what about essential accidents? And you probably aren't thinking that, but let's say if you knew about what essential accidents were. Essential accidents are things, he gives the example of, the capability of laughing is an essential accident of man, right? So you don't have to be a particular color or a particular size or anything, but one of the, based on what you are, a rational being, one of the essential accidents that you have, something coming from your essence, is your risability, your ability to laugh. So essential accidents, he says, 4, are caused by the constituent principles of the subject, the things that make the subject up, the principles that make the subject up. 5, God is the first cause, so there can be nothing caused in God. 7, so there are no essential accidents in God, right? If the essential accidents are caused by the constituent principles of the subject, and there's nothing caused in God, God is first cause, then there's nothing caused in God, then there can't be these essential accidents because there's nothing caused in God. So there 8, so there's no accidents in God, not even essential accidents. So there is no accident in God. Let's look at some objections. Objection 1, substance cannot be an accident. So this he gets from Aristotle in Physics, Book 1. And it just sort of, I want to say like makes common sense, but maybe you're just learning what substance and accidents are. And just think about like dog cannot be accidental, right? It can't be just something like thrown on top of whatever a substance is, right? Like so, there's no other way to really explain that, I guess, other than saying that you can't have a substance be an accident. When you think of substances, right, you just see that they can't be accidents. 2, so that which is an accident in one cannot in another be a substance, right? If something is an accident in one thing, it can't be a substance in another thing. And he says, as his example, heat is an accident in other things, so heat cannot be the substantial form of fire, right? Fire has got to have a different substantial form. It's not just pure heat. That's not what it is. 3, wisdom, virtue, and the like, which are accidents in us, are attributes of God. So in the Bible, these things are ascribed to God. We say that it says that God is wise. God is what is it? virtuous, and etc. Right? This says all kinds of different things about God. God is just, and all kinds of things like that. So these are things that are accidental to us, right? They're not what we are. We are humans. So they're accidents to us. So we just said they can't be substances somewhere else. But that would mean if God has these things, then they can't be a substance in God, right? So they must be accidents in God. That's the objection. His reply to this is that virtue and wisdom are not predicated of God and of us univocally. So what does he mean by that? Univocal predication means that they are said to be true of both things in the exact same way. So if I were to say, let's say that my shirt is orange and I picked a color that nothing else is orange in here. There's probably a book around here that's orange somewhere. That book over there is orange. I mean that those two things are orange in the same way. If I say that the board is meeting tomorrow, and if I say I'm sitting on a board, I mean those in an equivocal way. I mean them in two totally different ways, right? The board of directors and the board of wood are two totally different meanings. But there's also an analogical way, a similar way of meaning. So that would be something like this. If I say, I am healthy, and I say salad is healthy. Well, I don't mean that salad is healthy in that it has low blood pressure and it exercises a lot. I mean that salad is healthy for me, right? It is healthy, and it kind of means the same thing, but doesn't quite mean the same thing, right? It's an analogical use of the term healthy. So when we're talking about God, that's the way we're using the terms wisdom and virtue. We're using them in an analogical sense, not a univocal sense. We don't mean the exact same thing. That's what Aquinas is saying. So it does not follow that there are accidents in God as there are in us. How exactly is God wise and virtuous and stuff? I don't know. But whatever it is in us there are ways that we can. There are reasons why we would call him wise, but wisdom doesn't exist in him like it exists in us as an accident. How exactly he exists such that we would call him wise, that's something that we don't really have a grasp on. Objection 2. In every genus, there is a first principle. So later in the Summa, he has these examples. Unity is the first principle in the genus of number. So every number is like a little unity, right? Unity being the first principle of that genus. And the first movement is the first principle in the genus of movement. So those are his examples of first principles in a genus. 2, there are many genera of accidents, and genre is the plural form of genus, by the way. So there are many kind of genuses of accidents. So if the primal members of these genre, right, the first principles of these genre are not in God, there will be many primal beings other than God. These first principles would be outside of God, and they would be first existing things outside of God. 4, it's absurd that there would be primal beings other than God. We would have God, and then we would have all these other different things like unity existing out there, and what was the other? First movements existing out there, and all these other little things that are existing out there apart from God, along with God. And that would be absurd because God is, the first being. He's the first cause. 5, so the primal members of these genre are in God. So these things must be in God, and they would be like accidents in God. And that's the argument. Okay, his reply. Substance is prior to accidents. So the principles of accidents are reducible to the principles of the substance, as to that which is prior. The principles of accidents are reducible to the principles of substance because the accidents are ontologically, or the substances are ontologically prior to accidents. And all that means is that the accidents depend for their being on the substance and not vice versa. The substance doesn't depend on its being on the accidents. So, for example, the brown of a dog depends on the dog to exist. The dog doesn't depend on the brown for the dog to exist. So the principles of the accidents are contained in the principles of the substance. But 3, God is not first as if he were contained in the genus of substance. And this we saw in part 1, article 3, or question 3, article 5. So principles of accidents are reducible to principles of substance, but God is not in the genus of substance. 4, yet God is first in respect to all being outside of every genus. So it's kind of like God isn't even in this game of principles being reduced to other principles and, them being contained in these other genuses and all that, or genre or anything like that. Remember, we saw that God is outside of genus. So God isn't containing things in genus like principles. In fact, he's creating all of those things. So that's the idea here. That's the response to this objection. As always, please don't forget to support this project at my Patreon page, link in the description. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, and everything else that you can think of to do with a video like this. Next video, we're going all in. Is God altogether simple? We've already seen, does God have parts? Does God, matter, form, composite? Does he have genus? All this stuff that we've looked at. Now we're just going to say, so is he simple or not? And we'll see that in the next video. And we just have 2 more videos to go on this question, and then we'll get on to the next question. So stick around, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.